Marc Marquez drew the line himself. After Austin, no podium, a long lap penalty, fifth in the championship. He told the press exactly what comes next. Jerez will be a different kind of track. There, we will try to do a step. Myself more than the bike. And that is the defending world champion setting his own deadline. Not a journalist framing, not a rival's prediction. Marquez pointing at a circuit he hasn't won since 2019 and saying, this is where it changes. So what happens if it doesn't? And that question matters more than it would in any normal season, because the gap is not small. Bezzecchi leads with 81 points. Marquez has 45. 3 rounds, no GP podium, 1 sprint win. The title fight he was supposed to be defending has become a recovery operation before the first European round. So how did the reigning world champion get here? And what does Jerez actually need to deliver for the answer to be anything other than what the standings suggest? Let's start before the lights went out in Thailand, because that is where the real story begins. Marquez came into 2026 with almost no pre-season. The Indonesia crash in October, Bezzecchi taking him out on lap 1, coracoid fracture, ligament damage, cost him the final 4 rounds of 2025 and the Valencia test. By the time pre-season testing began at Sepang, he was still progressing through rehabilitation, still managing a shoulder that had been rebuilt twice, still figuring out what his new physical ceiling actually was. And it showed. His qualifying speed was there from round 1, but the race pace on Sundays, the first 3 laps, fresh tyres, body at its limit, that is where the problem lived. At Sepang, Daligna described Marquez as still progressing in his rehabilitation. Not ready, not 100%, progressing. And in Thailand, the evidence arrived quickly. He was fast enough to challenge. Aprilia's pace went beyond any injury excuse. But the tyre failure while running 4th only added to an already complicated picture. But the story doesn't end with the shoulder. Because in Austin, Marquez said something that landed harder than anything Ducati's management has said since the season began. After finishing 5th, after the long lap penalty, after his first 3 rounds without a GP podium, he said, "I'm missing. Myself is missing, not the bike. But in the first laps when the tyres are new, the bike becomes more aggressive and I can't ride at the moment." Let's sit with that for a moment. Not the bike, him, the most decorated active rider in MotoGP, taking responsibility for a problem that the data says is not entirely his. The defending champion publicly absorbing blame for something that is, at least in part, structural. Because the GP26 has a problem with tyre warm-up that is not entirely Marquez's physical limitation. The Aprilia pulls away in the early laps while the Ducati needs time to get the rubber working. This is the same deficit Di Giannantonio described. The others can brake later, use the front to turn the bike. At the moment we can't. It is a bike problem dressed as a rider problem. And when Marquez says, "Myself is missing," he is doing what champions do. Absorbing the narrative, protecting the team, and taking the weight so the criticism lands somewhere it can be managed. And oh yeah, Daligna is now publicly insisting Marquez will be 100% fit at Jerez. A team principal managing a narrative before his own rider's home race. Make no mistake, that is not reassurance. I don't think anyone who has followed Ducati closely this season can read it any other way. When a team boss feels the need to go on camera to confirm his rider's fitness, the concern is already circulating. The quote exists because the question exists. And the question exists because 3 rounds in, the people watching cannot tell whether what they are seeing is a slow start or a new ceiling. Let's look at what Jerez actually needs to deliver. Ducati have won every Sunday here since 2021, 5 consecutive years. And this is their circuit, the one where the Desmos Adichie works, where the history is, where the crowd turns orange and then turns red. Marquez himself has won here multiple times, with his last Sunday victory coming in 2019. And the MotoGP.com headlines before this weekend note it directly. Ducati haven't waited so long for a GP win since 2021. And it's 2014 since the factory team had a longer run without a rostrum. And that statistic has been sitting in every preview piece this week. It is the weight the team is carrying into the circuit they should own. But weight and pressure are different things. Ducati knows this circuit. The question is whether knowing the circuit is enough when the machine isn't producing what it needs to in the moments that matter. Let's be honest about what the subvert actually means here. Even if Marquez is healthier at Jerez, and the 3-week break after Austin exists precisely for that reason, the tyre warm-up deficit does not disappear with fitness. Aprilia's structural advantage in corner entry and early lap braking is not cancelled by a rested shoulder. It is built into the aerodynamics of the RSG P26. And Jerez, with its long hanging corners, is exactly the type of circuit where that advantage shows up. Carlos Checa said it from the outside. Think of Jerez as a layout. Long hanging corners. You need a bike that turns well. The Aprilia's now fast. It's good on the brakes. That is the description of a circuit that suits the Aprilia's strengths. I think there are two versions of what happens this weekend, and both are plausible. The first, Marquez is genuinely recovered. The shoulder finally lets him ride naturally in the first 3 laps, and he wins. Jerez resets the season. Ducati have parts in the truck for the Monday test. Can those parts fix a tyre warm-up problem that has existed since round 1? The gap starts to close. That version is real. The ability has never been in question, and the circuit history is real. But when was the last time Marquez needed a recovery narrative at a circuit he owns? The second version is harder to say out loud. Marquez is closer to himself physically. The bike deficit is still there. The first 3 laps are still the problem, and Bezzecchi extends. And if that happens, 36 points becomes something larger, and the question stops being about Jerez. I don't think this title is over after 3 rounds, but I think Jerez is the moment where we find out whether the explanation has been injury or something harder to fix. I suspect Ducati's management is not as calm about that question as they appear. Marquez set the deadline, and he pointed at this weekend and said, "This is where the step comes." And the uncomfortable truth, the one nobody at Ducati will say directly, is that even a fully fit Marquez may be asking a machine to do something the machine is not currently built to do in the first 3 laps of a Grand Prix. But that is not an injury. That is a gap. And does the gap close before summer? Or does Jerez become the race where the title fight quietly ends? And before summer, the gap needs a different kind of answer. Let us know in the comments below. And once you do that, make sure to click on the video appearing on your screen right now.